Right next to the Alps, but with one foot in Provence, the Drôme is home to a rich historical heritage and a variety of landscapes. It's a land where you take a step back from the rest of the world. A land where traditions are passed down. Wherever you go, medieval remains, hillside villages, Renaissance buildings and fairy tale castles evoke a sumptuous past. With its exceptional sunlight and numerous hidden places, the Drôme reaps the generous rewards of nature. The river Drôme runs unhindered from east to west across the entire department which bears its name. The source of this Mediterranean river is in Haut-d'Ivoire, from where it tumbles from a height of 1,000 meters before joining the Rhone 100 kilometers away. The Drôme crosses the town of Crest, immediately recognizable by its tower. This remnant of a 12th century castle once served as a fortress, then as a prison from the 15th to the 19th century. At 52 meters in height, it is the tallest keep in France. It's a multifaceted region. Heading northwards from Crest, you immediately cross several passes in the foothills of the Vercors Massif before descending into its sumptuous valleys. It's in this ideal place of contemplation that Cistercian monks founded an abbey in 1137. Added to its seclusion, Léoncelle has the rare advantage of being located near a stream, essential for the founding of a community. Closer to the Rhone, south of Crest, stands the village of Cliouscla, appearing in archives as early as 947. This former domain of the bishops of Valence owes its prosperity to its clay soil and the pottery made here since the 17th century. Resisting the dawning of modernity, the village still had some 50 active potters until 1902. It was in this year that Marius Enjolras had the bright idea of assembling this wealth of know-how into a single place of production. Over the 20th century, the workshop had to update and assert its identity in the face of competition. Odile Cazenave, the joint manager, works tirelessly.
We largely produce crockery. Here I'm having a bit of fun making pots. Well, not exactly having fun, but let's say relaxing. Because our staple products are utilities. That's what we mainly produce. It's something of the soul of the village. This pottery was built in 1903, so it's 121 years old. At the beginning, virtually everyone in the village was a potter or a potter-cum-farmer. And Mr. Enjolras decided to group everyone together here in this workshop.
Certain plates, made using the pear or nail techniques, were inspired by the results of archaeological excavations carried out nearby, whether it be the terre vernissée pieces or the côte froide plates. The neighboring village of Mirmande also has an ancient history. It owes its existence to the Adhémar de Monteil family in the 12th century. This is when its magnificent Romanesque church was built. The town developed in the 19th century thanks to sericulture, the breeding of silkworms. With declining production, the village was in danger of being abandoned until a famous cubist painter, André Lotte, fell under its spell in the 1920s. With his help, Mirmande became a lively center of contemporary artistic creation. The village is still home to numerous arts and craft workshops. A little further south, Le Poët-Laval is a fortified village dominated by its imposing medieval keep, offering a magnificent panorama of the Jabron Valley. Created in the 12th century by the Saint Jean de Jérusalem Order of Hospitaliers, the site has seen many changes. The religious wars brought about its gradual decline, and it would have been totally abandoned if not for the determination of a few passionate personalities. Today, Le Poët-Laval has come back to life and attracts many visitors. In the neighboring valley, La Bégude de Mazinques stands in an equally pastoral countryside and boasts a major asset: immense lavender fields which attract tourists from all over the world. This property belongs to Odile Guerpillon-Tassy, a former marketing consultant who took over the farm a few years ago. She grows organic lavender and lavandin on 9 hectares. Odile transforms her harvests into essential oils and cosmetic products, but she also organizes educational visits.
The public is keen to know how far you can go with lavender. What are the limits of this plant? It's used in aromatherapy, for cooking, in cosmetics. It's used in our daily lives, in the upkeep of the home, to provide a smell of freshness. It's a plant and an essential oil that everyone should have at hand.
For this small group from South Asia, it's a totally unknown environment. This is their first hands-on contact with lavender.
I give visitors access to these plants so that they can understand the process. I alert them to the organic, by which I don't mean that it's a danger, but on the contrary, I say that it's precious. The organic is complicated and requires a lot of work and humility. Currently, for example, we have storms and sometimes it's very hot, so we will have to start over with all the weeding work.
The essential oils are extracted in a nearby mill. Using a small still, she explains the principle of water vapor passing through plant matter in order to obtain the precious extract. Odile offers this oil in a line of natural cosmetic products. She has no regrets about all the energy she had to invest in the place.
It's a very beautiful county. So much of the land is cultivated. It's very agricultural. And in an agricultural county or region, when spring comes, the colours are so vibrant.
The Drôme is also one of the pioneering regions in organic farming in France.
For a long time, it was the leading organic producing county in France. I'm not sure if that's still true today, but in any case, it's well out in front. It's in the top 3 organic counties in France.
Close to the Pope's enclave, Grignan is one of the emblematic towns of Drôme Provençal. Built in 1543 at the request of Lord Louis Adimard de Monteil, the Saint-Sauveur Collegiate Church is remarkably preserved. Its new square is the work of the artist Philippe de Crozat. The village remained protected behind its walls until the end of the 15th century, when extension work to its suburbs was undertaken. In the 19th century, it was mainly livestock breeding which caused the town to expand. Before this gradually made way for trading and lavender growing. We're off to the south of the region to discover the Baronnie, the magnificent valleys which flirt with Provence, not far from Mont Ventoux. La Roche-sur-le-Buis is nestled in the heart of the Menon Valley. Outside the village, Le Terron farm extends over several hectares. Marc and Cécile Vidal raise merino sheep and Rove goats here. Their cheese is very popular at the Buis market, as is their artisanal oil made from tanche, a variety of olive specific to the region. Originally from Provence, the Rhone goat is renowned for the quality of its milk, with which a famous Brousse cheese is produced. Like every morning, Fabien, the son, comes to help Anaïs, a work-study trainee, to milk the 60 goats.
This breed of goat is the Rove. It's a rustic breed which produces little milk. The milk is very creamy, high fat and rich. This gives us a cheese yield which is far better, and the cheeses are nice and creamy.
The animals are docile and move around willingly in a well-organized ballet. The farm is guarded by several dogs. It's worth noting that the threat of wolves is very real here. As for Cécile, she's already busy with the previous day's collection.
Here we have yesterday's milk, and 24 hours later, after adding lacto and rennet, it's separated in two, a solid part called curd and a liquid part called whey. And that's what we're going to mould. This evening, they will have drained enough to be turned over. These are from yesterday. They've already been turned once and salted. The day after tomorrow, I'll remove them from their moulds and put them on racks so they can continue draining. These ones are ready for eating. We also have ashen cheeses. We put vegetable charcoal all over the cheese. This forms a film on it. It changes the ripening process because the gas exchanges between the cheese and the air differ from normal ripening. We've had some olive paste made, which is done by crushing it. And so I'm making a little sandwich, cheese and olive paste, which is a genuinely local taste.
Twice a week, Cécile goes to the large Buis des Baronnies market to sell her produce.
The agricultural model, which we had until now, is gradually disappearing. There are fewer large farms, not many farmers, and not many breeders left. On the other hand, there are new people arriving who want to live differently, with a degree of self-sufficiency. They arrive with another vision of agriculture, which can be interesting. I think we're at something of a turning point.
Cécile is hopeful that one day her children will take over the family farm and invent a new economic model. Continuing our way along the bottom of this valley, we pass before these astonishing marly ravines, which have sculpted the landscape. The road takes us very close to fully mature linden trees at 1,000 meters above sea level, between the Menon and the Charruy valleys. We cross the hamlet of Poët-en-Percipe. The sumptuous view overlooks the Banne mountain and the Mont Ventoux ridges. In the last century, it was a busy crossing point for all the herds leaving for summer grazing. Today, it is mainly hikers who use these paths. In the village, some people collect linden blossom out of tradition and because the trees are in their gardens. The golden age when the linden was a significant source of income has passed. On the other side of the valley, on the heights of Nyons, Nasha and her team nonetheless specialize in harvesting these flowers from which herbal teas are made. Nasha is passionate, added to which she is very muscular. So owners who have the means willingly delegate this physical work to her.
I like to return every 3 years. In that way, the pruning increases productivity and allows the tree enough time to produce nice new shoots. This time it's only been 2 years, but 2 years is good. This helps the sunlight to come through, as you can see, which encourages the formation of new shoots. And importantly, allows nice flowers to grow.
It is the beginning of July, and they stay for several days, given the density of the trees on the property. The market collapsed in the region, particularly due to an invasion of poor quality but cheap herbal teas from Asia. Nasha still supplies a few wholesalers looking for quality.
Harvesting from the linden is traditional. Few of us do it, but it's still a tradition.
Once the branches are on the ground, you need to have the knack of separating the flowers without damaging them.
The most profitable part, undoubtedly, herbal tea and herbalism outlets. People want great clumps, which are of good quality. That's what gives profitability a boost.
Out towards Mévouillon, the lavender is not yet completely in flower. In this open-air hangar, Marie-Josée Vidal and her team are manipulating huge bales of thyme. This is an old-fashioned distillery, the likes of which are rare these days. The casks are filled with thyme, while underground a boiler is fed with the dried residue of previous distillations. This huge tractor wheel is used to compact the herbs placed in the casks, which are then hermetically sealed. Through an external piping system, the product of the distillation is recovered. It's a local craft which satisfies regulars in the region. In less than an hour, the operation is over. It just remains to extract the herbs which the steam has passed through, and which, once dried, will serve as fuel for the next batches. A few weeks later, in mid-July, large splashes of purple on the slopes of the valleys indicate that the lavender harvest is well underway. At an altitude of about 1,200 meters, we find Nasha once again, who is now picking wild lavender by means of a small billhook.
This is wild lavender, which has powerful active ingredients. It's fine lavender with a small stem, small ears of flowers. So it's true that in terms of profitability, you need to harvest a certain quantity if you want to produce a litre of extract.
She entrusts her harvest to an artisan who practices very slow extraction in order to obtain exceptional essential oils.
The reason it's so prolific here is because of the biotope, which is to its liking. This is one of the reasons it has such a lot of active ingredients.
It's exhausting work, but it has to be done quickly before the sun is too hot, which makes harvesting difficult.
Certain lavender is used for distillation and is cultivated to be profitable when it's distilled. By way of comparison, this wild lavender yields 6 times less than cultivated lavender, and 10 or 11 times less than lavandin.
Cutting must be done with precision to ensure renewal of the resource.
Perennials always have this woody side you see here, and this herbaceous side here. You can see next year's shoots appear here and here. You should always cut without attacking the woody part, and of course leaving the shoots for next year. Otherwise there won't be any flowers, given that lavender flowers over 2 years. The first year it grows, and the second year it flowers.
It's time for Nasha to gather together her harvest. With the heat, the plants protect themselves and lose some of their active ingredients. Wild lavender is picked when it's fresh. In a fortnight, Nasha will be able to sell her first exceptional fine lavender essential oils at the market. Further down in the valley, the incessant ballet of tractors is a sign that harvest time is in full swing. It takes place from July to the end of August. In the extreme south of the Drôme, there are several villages of extraordinary character. This is true of Montbrun-les-Bains, a citadel village. It's located in a fertile basin protected from the Mistral by Mont Ventoux. 2 rivers flow here, renowned sulphurous springs where in 1860 Count Suarez d'Holland had the first thermal establishment built. In the old village, narrow cobbled streets called calades wind among medieval buildings and the remains of a Renaissance castle. Built on the ruins of an ancient fortress, the castle built for Charles Dupuy Montbrun was amongst the most beautiful in the region before being abandoned during the French Revolution. A few kilometers away, the fate of Holland has been different. Built in the 13th century on a rocky spur overlooking the entrance to the Toulourenc Gorge, the castle has been occupied by the Suarez d'Holland family since 1635. The original building has disappeared and the present-day castle is much larger because it envelops unoccupied houses of the village. Regular restoration work carried out by the family has made it possible to safeguard this unique heritage and embellish it.
This territory was very marked by local identities and by lords who defended this territory. They watched over the whole length and breadth of it, with its commercial trading territory, which was relatively rich. This territory of the barony has undergone many changes over the centuries, and where Holland stands was a stronghold belonging to the lords of Mévouillon. Over the course of the centuries, things evolved, and in 1635 a young girl named Isabeau de Lépine married a Spanish lord, François-Marie de Suarez. So this heritage was passed on to him.
The successive restoration work on the castle is carried out thanks to family funds or public subsidies. Living in a castle open to visitors and often with work being done on it requires unfailing optimism. It's the only private residence in the Baronnie which has been open to visitors since 1958. All these valleys which we've travelled through converge on Buis-les-Baronnies. This, capital of the powerful seigneury of Mévouillon in the 13th century, was later attached to Dauphiné. A city of markets and lawyers, it remained relatively prosperous until the Revolution. What interests visitors and local farmers today is the huge market every Wednesday morning. Cécile from the Théron farm sells her cheeses and olive oil to a clientele of loyal regulars. On the other side of the market, Nasha has received her first essential oils of fine wild lavender. The linden bloom is also ready for infusion. Like Cécile and Nasha, the different traders offer the fruits of what is sometimes arduous work, but which is of unique quality. We're back off to the north of the Drôme, along the Hautes-Alpes to the Diois region. It's a chaotic, rocky environment. This site is called Le Claps. It was created in 1442 following a landslide on the south side of the Pic de Luc. The fall of enormous blocks of stone created two lakes, which have now dried up. Only a small reservoir remains, to the delight of summer visitors.
It might be nothing, but really do I have to say I am so tired of the way. Undress my mind now. Just take your time now. You can do nothing wrong.
Cliffs, chasms, canyons. The region is full of character. Here too, just beyond Die, it is harvest time in the lavender fields of Chamalloc.
You could just lay me bare. You speak my name when you're asleep. Do you think of me?
At the other end of the village can be seen the steam coming from the Four Valleys distillery. This is the fourth generation of the Aubanel family to distill lavender. This traditional process of distillation of sheaves in casks now represents only 1% of their production. Today, in order to meet the requirements of laboratories in terms of volume and quality, it was decided to invest in cutting-edge equipment. Lavender arrives from the fields in these huge containers, with the stems and flowers already crushed. Once the lids are locked in place, the containers are completely watertight. Aside from efficiency, this modern process is also much faster. Distillation time is reduced to 1 hour, but it is only used for lavandin. Water consumption is reduced by 75%. The steam carrying the essence is cooled lower down in the tanks. The essential oil and the water are immiscible, so the oil, being lighter, rises to the top. It just remains to skim it off the surface. A few valleys further west of Chamalloc, the Amblaise Gorges are still a spectacular manifestation of the tormented geology of this territory. The relief was forged by the clash between earth and water on limestone soil. This fight produced cataclysmic landscapes of great beauty. At the bottom of these canyons, the Rhone River has managed to carve out a passage. A few kilometers away, the Gervanne troubles the calm of the landscape once more with the Druise waterfall, highly popular with enthusiasts. 72 meters high, it is surrounded by high rocky walls and tumbles noisily down, causing constant spray, particularly refreshing in summer. In the north of the department, the town of Tain-l'Hermitage stretches along the left bank of the Rhone. Its legendary hills are covered with vines which produce renowned wines such as the Hermitage. At the beginning of our era, Gauls and Romans competed for control of the region. The city was located on the route of the Via Agrippa, which followed the Rhone Valley as far as Vienne. As of this period, the trade in wine was at the forefront and its transportation was simplified by the river. On the other bank, Tournon also has numerous vestiges of the Roman era, intermingled with traces of a glorious medieval past. As with its neighbor, the wine trade was an important development factor for the city. Due to global warming, harvesting begins ever earlier here. The first baskets were filled in August, and we're now in mid-September. It's the turn of the famous chapoutier plots located at the top of the hillsides.
So here we are at the summit of the Hermitage, at the place called l'Ermite. The 2,000 years history of the Hermitage has been built around viticulture, which was initiated by the Romans after having defeated the Allobroges on the plateau of Valence. They started viticulture mainly on the hillsides because at that time the plains were reserved for growing wheat, while the soil on the hillsides was a little less fertile and therefore favoured growing grapes.
From these small plots, where the grapes are carefully picked, only a few thousand bottles are obtained. In addition to the quality of these great wines, their rarity has also helped build the legend.
One of the reasons why the Romans settled here was the Rhone, which made it possible to supply the entire empire with wine. Obviously, this had an influence. The Rhone flows from north to south, except here, where it goes from west to east. This creates a unique climate beneficial to the Hermitage.
Even though the Cistercian monks singled out the magical plots of the Burgundy climate in the 14th century, the Romans had recognized that these could produce an exceptional vintage long before them.
At the summit of the Hermitage, the soil is not very deep, only about 30 centimetres. So the vines need to draw the nutrients they need from deep down. So we're talking about vines which are 100 years old.
100-year-old vines also mean greater attention throughout the year and lower production volumes.
Historically, the vines are here because, having studied the genome of the famous Syrah grape variety, it became apparent that it came from the Ardèche grape and the Mondeuse Blanche from Savoie. The place where these two varieties crossed was around the Hermitage. So the Syrah was born here and was an ideal place for this vine. So with these geological advantages, the wines of the Hermitage were recognized as being exceptional very early on.
In the field, the team leaders monitor everyone's pace. The temperature rises quickly. The bunches of grapes mustn't cook in the bins.
What makes the Hermitage an exceptional place for making great wines is the combination of three elements. Quite a specific climate, with a wind called the Mistral, which preserves the vineyard and makes it healthy. Geology, which is rich in its diversity, with both granite hillocks, which are volcanic, and at the same time more sedimentary areas. And you also have know-how, which draws on 2,000 years of experience.
On the hillside, you have a better capture of the solar richness. And given that at the time it was the level of alcohol which represented the quality of the wine, the combination of the hillsides and the terraces where you had the reverberation of the granite meant that in the 19th century the wines of the Hermitage were the most expensive in France. It was all down to this natural richness.
Last summer, temperatures soared above 40 degrees several times, a factor that no longer can be ignored when working in the vineyard.
It's fair to say that the care we provide is adapted to this particular plot. The methods we use to deal with global warming are in place, and the vine is resilient, adapting year after year. So even though it's difficult, it's not a risk.
The grapes are rapidly transported to the presses in town, then placed in vats. Today, the entire fabrication process is virtually a closed circuit. There are specific vats for specific plots and varieties, each with hatches which make it possible to monitor the fermentation process. It's only much later that the wine begins aging in the cellars. What is less well known about the Drôme is that it is also a mountainous area. To the east begins the Vercors Natural Park, a territory shared with the neighboring department of Isère. La Chapelle en Vercors is perhaps the hub of this medium-altitude mountain area, with its occasionally harsh climate. The church tower, dating back to the 13th century, is one of the rare vestiges of the city and its surroundings not destroyed during the Second World War. On the night of July the 25th, 1944, the German army shot 16 young men in this farmyard in retaliation for resistance fighter actions. A land of resistance, Vercors and its mountains participated in the liberation of the country. It is undoubtedly at the end of autumn that the landscapes of the region are at their most beautiful. The forests are still colorful. The high plateaus leading to Saint-Bu have received their first sprinkling of snow, and it is not yet winter in the valley between Saint-Julien and Saint-Martin-en-Vercors. Here we are on the primordial farm of Melissa Galleron in Saint-Martin-en-Vercors, where they recently started growing organic shiitake mushrooms. Also called lantin from the oak, it's a variety that comes from Asia. Melissa cultivates it indoors, using a substrate composed mainly of Vercors straw. In just 2 weeks, fine clusters are already ready to be picked.
These are mushrooms, which can also be grown outdoors, but I grow them indoors to achieve a stable volume all year round, so I can supply restaurants with fresh mushrooms every week without being dependent on climate. Once the substrate has turned completely white, after 2 weeks the first mushrooms start emerging, if all the conditions are ideal.
Richer in minerals and vitamins than its cousin, the button mushroom, it also has a texture which chefs find more interesting.
After 2 weeks, we can harvest, and we can return to the substrate and harvest again, less than a month later.
Melissa makes regular deliveries to local restaurants as well as to markets and organic stores. They're all delighted to have fresh produce all year round.
All my neighbours are organic farms, so I'm really lucky to be able to farm in this environment.
Give me just a minute to find the courage to say what's on my mind. 'Cause I've been holding out for a sign. Now you got.
She also has oyster mushrooms on offer, which she cultivates in the same way, with very good results.
Won't say 'cause you don't want a fanfare. Don't change, I just wanted to know who you are, who you are.
During the Second World War, Vercors, a natural fortress, constituted an important base for the French resistance, taking refuge throughout the Massif. In April 1944, Vassieux became one of the martyr villages of this heroic resistance. Just above the village, near the Col de la Chaux, at an altitude of 1,300 meters, the Resistance Memorial is symbolically hidden in the mountain, like the men and women who secretly took refuge there. Having crossed the pass, you arrive at the Fondure le Plateau. Despite the approaching winter, wild animals are still around. Romain Ribeiro, an expert naturalist, knows the place well and checks that all is calm whenever he can.
We're in November and can observe the rutting behavior of the chamois. The mating season is a time which mustn't be disturbed, because the reproduction period is important if the species is to perpetuate. If you have too many onlookers coming too close at this time, that can potentially disrupt the future of the species.
For several years now, Romain has been observing behavioral changes in these animals linked to climate change.
We have populations of ibex living at an altitude of 300 or 400 meters, which are starting to feel the effects of these changes in the weather. Despite this, for the moment, the species is doing well. We have around 1,000 animals on the Massif, whose health is fairly well preserved. Analyses which were carried out confirmed that the population is in good health.
Turn and leave it all behind. Another leaf, another life.
On the other side of the valley, a spectacular 4-kilometer gash dominates the Royonnais landscape.
There's a place
Overlooking the Cirque de Combe-Laval, a road hewn out of the rock itself joins Saint-Jean-en-Royans and the Col de la Machine.
where the leaves are colored gold.
Originally, it was intended to facilitate the transport of wood from the beautiful Landes forest to Royan. It was quite a technical achievement for the time.
Carve them into every stone. Maybe
Combe-Laval draws what is called a geological indentation in the Vercors limestone plateau, responsible for the staggering scenery on either side of the fault.
in the morning reflection, water melts into you.
A little further west, we reach the Col de la Bataille, one of the rare crossing points which allows access to the south of the Vercors Massif. At an altitude of 1,300 meters, access during winter is often limited due to snow. In the autumn, the Ambel Plateau can still be reached after a good long hike. At an altitude of 1,500 meters at its highest point, the plateau with its vast grasslands, forests and clearings is a place rich in history linked to the resistance in the Vercors. Today it's a vast summer pasture area, classified as a sensitive natural space. From the Tête de la Dame, a small intermediate peak, the panorama is unique. In mid-January, we return south to Nyons. It's harvest time for the famous olives in the fields surrounding the town. Already populated more than 5,000 years ago, a sign of the city's particularly prosperous period from the 14th century was the construction of the Romanesque bridge built between 1341 and 1409. The city's appearance has many of the ingredients which added to the charm of Provençal villages in times gone by. In the center of the Fort of Nyons neighborhood, the Tour Rondon is the city's emblematic monument. This keep was transformed into the Notre-Dame de Bon Secours Chapel in 1863. Surrounded by angels, the statue of the Virgin Mary stands 3.5 meters high. Nearly 55% of the municipality's territory is occupied by agricultural land. Amongst other things, particularly tasty olives are grown here. On the heights of the city, the Bresse farm is a family business that has been growing tanche since 1829. With global warming, Régine Caneco-Bresse only started harvesting the olives at the end of December.
100 shades of sparkling eye.
It snowed again last night on the surrounding peaks. The fields have not frozen over, but it is nonetheless very cold. This temperature range suits Nyons tanche olives very well. The farm is organic and makes a point of not using machines to harvest its most emblematic plots. As far as possible, everything is done by hand.
Nyons olives, when picked for the table, are picked at full maturity. At this point, they're nicely black, and most importantly, wrinkled.
What causes Nyons olives to wrinkle is the sap descending when it's cold. So the olive loses its sap and the water inside it and wrinkles. Sometimes, after 10 days or so, it gets hot again and they become smooth again. It's a bit like an inner tube. When it's hot, it inflates, and when it's cold, it deflates.
The olive is certified by a protected designation of origin. It is just as sought after as an eating olive as it is for its oil. Most olive pickers protect their fingers with tape. With the cold and the friction of the branches, everything becomes abrasive.
The best conditions for Nyons olives are well-draining soil, as opposed to being stony, with cold winters, warm summers, and not too much humidity. It's the combination of those things. What is specific to the Drôme is that our olive tree, the tanche, has adapted to the cold, because it's a little colder here than further south in Provence.
However, in 1956, a terrible frost eradicated a large part of the family's trees. Most were able to regrow, thanks to secondary shoots, which explains why some today give the impression of having 2, if not 3, trunks. In the space of 2 hours, the temperature has risen by almost 8 degrees, tempered by a cool breeze. However, rain is forecast, so speed is necessary because if there is a downpour, harvesting will have to stop. Even though the yield is slightly lower than last year, the olives are beautiful, wrinkled to perfection, and ready to be taken to the presses further down in the city.
The characteristic of Nyons oil, when it comes from these ripe olives, is great sweetness, great smoothness, and with a slightly nutty taste. It's very aromatic, but in a subtle way.
Olives have been cultivated for more than 2,000 years in the Baronnie, and there are some 260,000 olive trees in Nyons today. The Tanche is responsible for the city's renown around the world. But many other treasures await the visitor, because the Drôme holds many secrets.
The sun is beaming at the moon, oh, and the horn on the record player, thump, 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 yeah. The hearts and the feet of the people jump, 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 yeah. And I don't